You're mayor of the city of Johannesburg. This is a city that one would consider the backbone of South Africa. I mean, it's the biggest economy in the continent. It's the lifeline of the country. There are a lot of overarching issues. But right now, you just come out of a discussion with the residents. The overarching issue seems to be water. So I think a lot of residents want to know from your team and the reports that you've been getting, is there a clear understanding of why South Africa's jewel essentially is struggling with something someone might consider simple to provide? I mean, when you think of Johannesburg, we're right there with the New Yorks of the world, London, is there an understanding, a clear one, of why we can't, provide the citizens of South Africa's jewel of a city with water?
So there's a misconception that suggests that 2/3 of the city is without water. It's untrue. It's within the city that are affected, and those that are affected are in dire need of intervention. It's just unfortunate that we hate our city so much that we focus on everything that needs to be addressed. It's a historical challenge that my blue-eyed predecessors have ignored simply on the basis of focusing on, I don't know, whatever their priorities were at the time, but critical to the maintenance of service delivery is the upkeep and the maintenance of the infrastructure. It's difficult to accept the fact that a city like ours that has been engineered with highly complex and complicated networks that run below surface. If you look at our metro center and the plans, you'd be shocked. But then you realize in today's administration, we discover the fact that the state of decay has compromised the intense level of investments that were made in establishing such a network called the city of Johannesburg. Well, there are other contributing factors in terms of the city being a melting pot, like you had alluded to. And that simply suggests that we are a global destination. Everyone and anyone from the African continent that looks for opportunities, their first point of departure is the city of Johannesburg. And therefore, the population density and the infrastructure rollout in terms of the new developments that are currently underway, amongst other things, are putting a strain on a historical infrastructure that needs to be upgraded to a point that we are anticipating what the city will look like, let's say 50 years from now, as opposed to us focusing on just the surface developments and neglecting the critical infrastructure. The water shortages, the water cuts, the scarcity of water in the city of Johannesburg is something that is unacceptable. I must say so myself. It cannot be correct that ratepayers in, like you said, a world-class African city have to struggle with basic services such as water. How our intergovernmental relations are structured and our competencies and dependencies as local government define how we then service our residents, which is a discussion that we are having as the current executive to get a sense as to how do we best find a way to be fully accountable of any situation that we might encounter that is in relation to the services that we render to our people. For argument's sake, the city does not have its own water treatment plant. We rely heavily on the other spheres of government, of which it's something that we need to to correct. Let me say, use the words correct, because in as much as they depend on the city of Johannesburg in the main, as we are the biggest customer, in return, we struggle. We struggle to maintain those particular relationships. And the best way and the only way in which we can be able to find a practical way forward is the understanding of putting the residents' needs before our own egos, before our own need to be seen as the providers of the solutions. So it is important that we appeal again to our residents for consideration and patience.
But the residents can say in turn, we've done our part on our side. We're paying our rates. We're doing things that, law-abiding, law-respecting citizens of the country are expected to do. Why now the onus must again be on us to be patient when seemingly the people on your side are not doing their jobs?
So, no, you're correct. You're correct in a sense that the residents are paying for a service that they are not receiving. That on its own, like I said, is unacceptable. I don't want to quote the common rhetoric of aging infrastructure and a compromised infrastructure that is being attended to. It is being attended to, and that's probably the main reason, or the like you say, overarching issue that we need to take into account, that we do have an appreciation of the infrastructure backlog in terms of the upkeep, in terms of the maintenance that has not taken place for a long time. And we are starting to feel its impact, unfortunately, during this administration. However, we are hands on deck. We are hands on deck. Government understands that this is unacceptable, and therefore it is a priority of ours that I can safely say we've got our hands on the pulse.
Personally, do you feel the city of Johannesburg has the depth to deal with the current, many crises that we have? Do you feel like we have the right people in the right places to get us out of the multitude of problems that we have that have been happening, in all the different administrations? Seemingly, the city is getting worse and worse and worse. Do you have the right people in the right places, and people that are willing, to work for the city and to make sure that the citizens going back are paying, are getting their money's worth, when it comes to, service delivery options that the city is supposed to give to them?
So there's a term called that is called patriotism, and patriotism is said to be a political ideology. And then when you bring it back to the African context, you will find that we have Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is defined differently. And where you would find a government emblem, you would read, or it seeks to personify that element of, they call it Batupele principle. Batupele principle suggests that you need to empower, right? And when you empower, your qualifying criteria, I'm not sure if it's the same as that which is required for a patriotic mindset, because Batupele is being considered across the board. Then you'd find that we then create mass opportunities as a solution to mitigate a historical challenge of disenfranchised people. But subsequent to that, the competency that is required for the maintenance, the competency that is required for the management, the competency that is required for a futuristic approach then becomes a compromise. And I cannot say that the city or the country does not have the capacity or is not considerate of what it requires for us to build a world-class African city in our context. But we need to educate our people enough to understand that 1994 presented an opportunity for us to build a country and a society that we thrive to achieve. And it doesn't mean that when you are a qualified doctor, then you should be recognized based on your qualification. It means that as a qualified doctor, what are you doing to contribute towards a developmental state? The same applies for the banking sector, the same applies for entrepreneurs, because as of late, we, especially the young people are looking for instant gratification. They want to get tenders so that they can be empowered enough for them to experience life. And that we are not there yet as a country. We are not there yet. And the only way in which we can be able to shift the mindset of the people in general is to make them understand that it's about what you contribute towards a developmental state that will define. It cannot be correct that many of our systems, many of our institutions are compromised. Compromised why? Because of our mindset, our approach towards what we think government is. So let me take myself as an example. Many people look at me and associate me to the, how can I put this? To the most vulnerable of our people, which is the homeless people, and that man can't be the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, right? Yeah. That's the general perception. But little do they know that the title holds no significance over my desire to contribute towards the developmental state. So regardless of what the perceptions might be, my concern and what would make me content about the term in which I would have served is the contribution that I would have made to develop. This is where I was born and bred. I need to see changes on the ground, and that is what drives me more than anything. And I'm hoping, and I'm looking to try and inspire many of us to have an appreciation of that we need to sacrifice. No, we are not there yet as a country. We still have a long way to go.